أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله اللهم لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما وارزقنا فهم النبيين وحفظ المرسلين اللهم افتح إلينا حكمتك وانشر علينا رحمتك يا ذا الجلال والإكرام وصل اللهم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله الكرام ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome everyone to session number 3. Inshallah, what we'll be doing today, after we do our section from the Hikam, we are going to start on the Mabadi'a Ashra, the 10 principles of logic, or rather the 10 principles of every science. And we'll be looking at these 10 principles insofar as logic is concerned. So this is going to be sort of like an overview before we go more in depth into it. So let's get started with the Hikam from number, where were we? Where did we stop? We stopped at number 10, so we'll start at number 11. He says, Ibn Ata'illah, ادفن وجودك في أرض الخمول فما نبت مما لم يدفن لم يتم نتاجه. In your copy, I think there is a mistake in there. It should say fi ardi, not fi arda. So there is a fatha there. That's a mistake. You need to rectify that. So it should be fi ardi. Idfin wujudaka fi ardi al-khumul. He says, bury, dafan karo, bury your existence in an earth of obscurity. Khumul, obscurity. Yani ingloriousness or namelessness, without fame and fortune and all these things. He's saying, bury yourself in that which has got no fame, has got no mashhur in it. فَمَا نَبَتَ مِمَّا لَمْ يُدْفَنْ, because that which sprouts from not being buried, لَمْ يَتِمُّ نِتَاجُهُ, does not bear proper fruition. If you don't bury a seed properly in the earth, it will not sprout with its fruit. Let's move on. We'll circle back to understanding it better. Then he says, ما نفع القلب شيء مثل عزلة. Nothing benefits the heart more than such a thing as seclusion or isolation. What you would call a spiritual retreat, not a physical retreat, but spiritual. يدخل بها ميدان فكرة. It enters into a state of fikr, into a state of thoughtfulness, into a state of reflection, of what you would now call meditation. So this is what he's saying on that. Bury yourself from the obscurities, from the things of fame, from the things of fortune, from the things of worldly aspects, from all these things. This is what you would call zuhud. Isolate yourself from all these, because it's only in that isolation can the real fruit start sprouting. And he's referring now in this case to the isolation of the heart from the rest of the world of causes and effects. Nothing will benefit the heart more than this isolation, because through this isolation it now enters into a realm of thought, and it is how the individual now flourishes internally. So then he posits and says, كيف يشرق القلب وصور الأكوان منطبعة في مرآته. How can the heart be expected to rise and shine when all the forms of the world, of the created realm, are mirrored in it, are imprinted into its mirror? أم كيف يرحل إلى الله وهو مكبل بشهواته. How can the heart be expected to journey to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to do this rihla, this journey to the proximity, the divine proximity of the divine presence, when it is shackled, it is bound by its desires and its lusts? أم كيف يطمع أن يدخل حضرة الله تعالى وهو لم يطهر وهو لم يتطهر من جنابات غفلاته. How then can it expect to desire, to yearn, to enter the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when it is not purified from the impurities of its heedlessness? أم كيف يرجو أن يفهم دقائق الأسرار وهو لم يتب من هفواته? Or how can it hope to understand the subtleties, the nuances, the finer particulars of the mysteries and secrets when it has not redeemed itself, repented from its errors and its mistakes? So you've got four things that are being highlighted here. One is the forms of the external world, the things that are alluring, that draw the attention of the heart through the soul, through the nafs. One of his hikam, inshallah, we will look at it later, is one that I like quoting all the time. That the realm is in its created form, its outward form is an allure. And it's in its inward form, it is discernment. And the soul is transfixed on the outward form, while the heart is looking for its inward discernment. So if the soul is inclined towards the form, then, and the heart is weakened, remember we said that the structure of the internal governance is such that the heart should be the king. And if you have a weak king, then he is subject to the volitions of his subjects, rather than him being in a position of leadership. And so if the soul is inclined towards these allures, then the heart is also going to end up getting allured and drawn into those forms. And those forms are thus now imprinted on its surface like a mirror. The second thing is the desires themselves. This is the shahwa, right? So it is shackled by the shahwa. The heart is not detached from the desires of the soul. It is deluded in the sense that it is finding pleasure and delight in the same things that the soul finds pleasure and delight. Then the fourth thing is this state of heedlessness, ghafla. How can you hope to be in proximity with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when you are tainted by heedlessness? Because the divine presence is a presence of purity. And that which is impure cannot come in contact with the pure. And in the hierarchy of things, that which is pure is regarded in higher regard, in higher rank than that which is impure. The impure is regarded lower in rank. That which is higher in rank cannot be expected to descend to a state of lower rank in order to fix the purity. It doesn't work like that. It is that which is impure must be purified and cleansed so that it can then rise to a rank of purity. So in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says about the Quran itself, إِنَّهُ لَقُرْآنٌ كَرِيمٌ فِي كِتَابٍ مَكْنُونٍ لَا يَمَسُّهُ إِلَّا الْمُطَهَّرُونَ. None can touch its essence save those who are purified. Why? Because the Quran is that of a pure origin. And the Quran cannot come and enter into a state of impurity just to satisfy the convenience of that which is impure. No, that which is impure must cleanse itself, rectify itself, and then rise in order to access that which is pure. This is where the Christian doctrine really gets, you have to question the logic of the Christian doctrine, because the Christian doctrine rests on the foundation that God reincarnated himself. وَنَعُوذُ بِاللَّهِ مِنْ هَذَا. He reincarnated himself and came into this world. And then in the Bible there is the verse which they love quoting. I think it's in John 3:16. Thus did God love his creation so much that he sacrificed his only begotten son for the sake of others. So according to them, this is the whole doctrine, that Christ died for the sins of us and thus through that process purified us. i.e., God the pure had to descend to a level of impurity in order to make us pure. The logic just doesn't match up. That which is pure is of a higher degree. That doesn't descend down to level of impurity. No, the impurity must be rectified so that it can rise to a level of purity. The fourth thing are the errors and the mistakes, the sin that one commits. Those need to be rectified. So there are these four things now. Listen to what he says in the next portion now, because he's going to explain more about the realm itself. Al-kawnu kulluhu dhulmatun. The created realm in its entirety is dhulma. It is darkness. Why is it that? Because the form, this outward physical form, the material form, is not self-illuminating. So Imam al-Ghazali in the Mishkat al-Anwar, he talks about the different kinds of bodies and the lights that they have. And he basically streamlines them into three types. He says the first kind is that which does not have self-luminance, nor does it illuminate others in terms of a reflected light. So those are what you call the dull objects, right? The physical dull object. If this object was here in this room and the lights were switched off, I would not know that this object is here until I switch on the light. The object itself cannot tell me about itself, that I am here and this is what I look like and this is what my purpose is. I have to discern from it. And the way I would discern from it is when light falls on this object. I'm talking in terms of physics, but the same concept applies. Light falls on the objects and then enters my eyes, and then I'm able to see it. Well, the same applies to a metaphysical aspect as well. Things are known when they are made known. That's what Noor does. It brings to light that which was in darkness, and it makes known that which was unknown. That is what, when you say you learn, you know something now, there's a light that has come on in terms of your knowing it. So this realm itself is a realm of darkness. It is not self-illuminating, nor does it illuminate others. Then you've got the second category, whereby you've got bodies that they are not self-illuminating, but they do reflect light off and transmit to others. So they receive light and they transmit to others. This is now where we move from the category of غير عاقل, inanimate things, and then we look at now animate things. So human beings, for example, or the jinn, these are animate beings and they are aqili, they can reason. But then in this group now you've got individuals who they don't actually have any insight themselves to offer. They are basically mediums of transmission. So they receive information and then they transmit information. So they're just basically reflecting off, but they don't illuminate themselves. Then you've got the third category. These are now those who you would call ulul albab, those who have reached the stage or the rank of understanding. And these are the people who themselves emit Noor. You see, they emit insight, they are self-illuminating and they illuminate others as well, right? So the lowest of the low is this realm that we are in, the realm of darkness. The highest of the high is the realm of pure light. So this realm of created things is a realm of darkness. وَإِنَّمَا آنَارُهُ ظُهُورُ الْحَقِّ فِيهِ. Indeed, it is only illuminated by the manifestation of Al-Haq. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as Al-Haq. He is the one who illuminates it. And this is why he says, Allahu nuru samawati wal ard. He, Allah, is the light of the heavens and the earth. Meaning, He is the one who illuminates everything and makes known what is unknown. فَمَنْ رَأَى الْكَوْنَ وَلَمْ يَشْهَدْهُ فِيهِ أَوْ عِنْدَهُ أَوْ قَبْلَهُ أَوْ بَعْدَهُ. The one who witnesses the realm, or the one who sees the realm, the one who looks and sees the realm, but does not witness by it, does not witness it in itself, by it, before it, or after it. Meaning any aspect of it does not witness the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because the realm is the manifestation. It is the sign. You see, it's the alam. And as a sign, the sign doesn't point to itself, it points to something else, that which it signifies. So every created thing signifies the presence of the Creator. If you did not see that, you look at the created realm, and by it you do not witness the manifestation of the divine in it, the manifestation of the divine by it, the manifestation of the divine before it, or the manifestation of the divine after it, in no aspect do you see the divine presence in it. فَقَدْ أَعْوَزَهُ وُجُودُ الْأَنْوَارِ. This individual is destitute, is desperately in need of the existence of light. وَحُجِبَتْ عَنْهُ شُمُوسُ الْمَعَارِفِ بِسُحُبِ الْأَثَارِ. This individual is veiled from the sun, from the suns, meaning the lights, the suns of understanding, of knowing, by the clouds of antiquities, would be a right word there. Antiquities meaning the traces of, because these are the athar. This realm is the athar of meaning. It is the product, it is the manifestation of what precedes it in meaning and in light. So it is a trace of, it's an effect of. You understand? So this individual who does not see the divine presence in the created realm is in desperate need of the light, of the existence of light, to be able to see, has been deprived of the sun of luminance. This is metaphorical. We're not talking about the actual sun in the sky. He's talking about the sun that illuminates, because in the physical world, it is the sun that illuminates for us our day. So he's talking about this metaphorically. He's talking about the sun of gnosis, of knowing, of understanding, because he is clouded by the externalities, the forms themselves. Then he says, مِمَّا يَدُلُّكَ عَلَى وُجُودِ قَهْرِهِ سُبْحَانَهُ أَنْ حَجَبَكَ عَنْهُ بِمَا لَيْسَ مَوْجُودًا مَعَهُ. From what then indicates to you of the existence of His omnipotence, His majesty, His power, His presence. Subhanahu, glory unto Him, is that He has veiled Himself from you with what does not itself have existence the same as Him. He has veiled Himself from you with His creation that does not have the same existence that He has. To understand this better, you have to look at the next section. I think there's somebody at the door. You want to see that? Somebody at the door. He says, كيف يتصور أن يحجبه شيء. How can it be conceived that he should be veiled by a thing? وهو الذي أظهر كل شيء. And yet he is the one who manifests everything. كيف يتصور أن يحجبه شيء وهو الذي ظهر بكل شيء. How can it be conceived that he is veiled by a thing when he is the one who is manifest through everything? And that first statement is repeated in every aspect, so I'm not going to keep repeating it. وهو الذي ظهر في كل شيء. So كيف يتصور أن يحجبه شيء, then وهو الذي ظهر في كل شيء, and he is the one who is manifest in everything. وهو الذي ظهر لكل شيء, and he is the one who is who's where is it? I lost my who's manifest. وهو الذي ظهر لكل شيء, and he is the one who is manifest to everything. وهو الذي ظاهر قبل وجود كل شيء, and he is the one who is manifest before the existence of everything. وهو الذي أظهر من كل شيء, and he is the one who is more manifest than everything. وهو الواحد الذي ليس معه شيء, and he is the one whom alongside there is nothing. وَهُوَ أَقْرَبُ إِلَيْكَ مِنْ كُلِّ شَيْءٍ, and He is more closer to you than anything in existence. وَلَوْلَاهُ, and were it not for Him, لَمَا كَانَ وُجُودُ شَيْءٍ, nothing would be in existence. يَا عَجَبًا, what a marvel it is. كَيْفَ يَظْهَرُ الْوُجُودُ فِي الْعَدَمِ, how the existent has manifested into non-existence. He's referring to us as the created things. How we feel. You see, we know we are existent. And this is one of the most profound things about the human being, meaning that which has consciousness and intellect, is able to affirm. This is part of our fitrah. It's one of the qualities of our fitrah, in that we know. And this is not something anyone can teach you. It's not something that you learn. It's not something that somebody tells you or informs you, by the way, did you know that you are existent? No, it's something that you know deep down, that you are an existent entity and you are aware of your existence. And part of your nature is to protect your existence from annihilation. It's a very astounding thing about the human being. So how is it that the existent is now non-existent in compared to who? In compared to Him, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. أَمْ كَيْفَ يَثْبُتُ الْحَادِثُ مَعَ مَنْ لَهُ وَصْفُ الْقِدَمِ, or how is it that the accidental, the thing that is contingent on, has been established with the one to whom is the attribute of eternity? How amazing is that? That we are a contingent entity and our contingency is temporal, and that contingency is linked, is established with one who himself has an attribute of eternity. You know, when you feel like the world, when you feel like you're so alone, well, like you could be a step away from annihilation, the one thing that would give you tatma'inn al-qulub is dhikrullah. Ala bi dhikrillah. It's only by the remembrance of God are the hearts given aman and security, because when you then realize that your existence is in the hands of He who is most powerful, most merciful, eternal, nothing like unto Him. Laysa kamithlihi shay'un. There is nothing that is like unto Him. Anything that you could conceptualize, you could think of, any theory you could come up with, any form, whatever it is you could come up with, He is not that. You cannot conceive of Him in his true nature, because He has veiled Himself from you. And yet, deep down inside, you know that He is the only one who can sustain you. Even the atheist has to admit it. When the bullets are flying overhead, the only thing the atheist can say is, "Oh my God," or "Jesus Christ," whichever one he wants to go for. Right? Even the atheist has to affirm them. This is deep down in human nature and cannot be removed. I think we can. Yeah, I think let's stop here then. We will do. So that was number 16. So we'll start next week, inshallah. We'll do number 17. And we'll see how far we can get on that. I'm trying to give them like sections, but they're not actually like sectioned. The proper way to study this text is to go really one by one and go in depth as much as possible into each one. But I think we can stop here on this, and we can proceed with our text on. So that's make that rectification on Hikam number was it 11? It should be fi ardi and not fi arda. And that's pretty much it. I did not see any other issue. So now, okay, we'll proceed on number 17 next week, inshallah. So let's get started on the 10 principles, Mabadi'a Ashra. So, the 10 foundations of the art of logic, this is what is on the text that you have there. In the Islamic tradition, the sciences were not just studied in a sort of haywire fashion, like you just pick a science and you start studying whatever it is. The Muslims held a high regard for the sciences, and they actually regarded sciences as art forms. And the Muslim tradition has got rankings of sciences. It's not just A to Z, astronomy to zoology and whatever lies in between. They had rankings, and in fact, the libraries in which they kept all the texts had a specific way in which the books were also organized. So the Quran was always on the top shelf, and then the books of hadith were always on the second shelf, like that. And then the books of tafsir would come after that, and then books of sharh on the hadith would come after that, and then books of grammar would come after that. So they always had this ranking, and they codified. This is one of the things that people forget about what the Muslim civilization really did insofar as the sciences. They did many things, but in a nutshell, the Muslims, they did two unique things that has brought civilization to what it is today, both in its negative attributes and positive attributes as well. The one thing that the Muslims did is they bridged the gap between the sciences of the different civilizations. So these sciences were studied by the Greeks, they were studied by the Romans, they were studied by the Indians, the Chinese, they were studied by all these different people, and they had their own versions and understandings of them. What the Muslim world did in its uniqueness was to bridge the gap between them all. So they started translating the Greek works into Arabic, they started translating Indian, Chinese works into Arabic, they even started trying to translate the Egyptian works, which were in hieroglyphics, into Arabic. And so they sort of brought it into this, unified language. The second thing that they did was to codify the sciences, because these sciences were in variant forms. And so they basically codified them and gave them structure. And one of the ways in which they gave the sciences structure was through identifying that each science universally has got 10 principles. Now, a principle, a mabda, is the starting point, ibtida, the initiation of it. It's where it begins from, the axiom. This applies universally to all particulars. So the 10 principles applies to the science as a whole, and then also applies to each individual theory within the science. Every subject takes on the same principles. Every set of rules or principles, every equation, even right down to the smallest particular, has got embedded into it those 10 principles. So this here what we have is a versification, and there are many other versifications that have been done. This was done by a 17th century, they've written it there. He died in 1792, common era, 1207 Hijrah. This was the great scholar Muhammad Ali as-Sabban. He versified this particular way, and it's very simple and easy to grasp, and it's good if you memorize this, so you remember the 10 sciences. This is one of the other things that the Muslims did, is that they versified many of the sciences. It's very interesting because it's sort of a mnemonic device. You could basically get everything insofar as a science is concerned, all its principles and its established rules, just by memorizing the versified lines. So if you want grammar, for example, one of the first texts you will learn is the Al-Ajurumiyya, which is the basic grammar. And then you can learn the Alfiya of Ibn Malik, which is a bit more complex. And every science, even Tawheed, Aqidah, Fiqh, all of them, they've got a versified form that if you just memorize the lines of poetry, it basically tells you everything there is in that science. So this poem it begins, Inna mabadi kulli fannin ashra. And so this is what the Muslims call every science. They call it an art form. A fan is an art form. So every art form has got 10 principles. You have the translation there, so that's fine. Each science contains these 10 elements. Same thing. Al-haddu wal-mawdu'u thumma thamra. You've got the had, which is the definition of it. Now, the definition here is its concept, its essential concept. That's what they've translated as the essence of it. What is its essence? The first grasping of it, al-had. That includes the definition of what the science is. Wal mawdu'u, what is its subject? What is it studying? In reality, you've got the object and you've got the subject. The subject exists because the object exists. The object does not exist because the subject exists. And you have to always remember that. The subject is existent because of the existence of the object. The object does not exist because of the subject. So look at an example of the universe, for example. The universe does not exist because physics exists. Rather, physics exists because the universe exists. If there is no universe, then you don't need physics. What are you studying? There is no planets and stars. What are you studying? There is no gravity. What are you studying? So the subject is existent because of there is an object to study. In the science is where you will find the subject. This is now what the subject is. What is the subject matter of the science? What is it studying? What is it examining? What are you investigating? And so far as its study. And then thumma thamra. What are its benefits? وَفَضْلُهُ وَنِسْبَةٌ وَالْوَادِعُ. What is its virtue? This is what you find secular sciences, they don't have this. They don't have virtue. In the Western world, in Western culture, they've removed the concept of virtue entirely. They've replaced it with value. So you find this in the rhetoric, Western values, Christian values now. It's no longer Christian virtue. They've removed values. There's a deeper conspiracy behind that. Because virtue is the antonym of vice. You do good and you avoid sin. But if you remove virtue from the picture, then you also eliminate the concept of sin, because one is contingent on the other. Good is there because there is existing evil, and evil is there because there is good. These are opposite forces. If you remove virtue, then you also get rid of sin. And this allows them to now establish a new doctrine that they call secular. Because now you can just decide which one you want to do and which one you don't want to do, and then you give it a value. Because virtue is intrinsic, it doesn't have a value. Virtue has it speaks for itself. But when you now bring in a legal system, a legislation that determines what we want to determine. See, we feel like homosexuality is okay to do, it's legalized. It's not seen as a sin anymore, because you've removed the very concept of virtuous relationship. And so if you remove virtuous relationship, then every other relationship becomes a relative matter. It now all depends on what value you give it, whether it's monetary, whether it's cultural, whether it's social, whatever other extrinsic value it might be. And so now you just replace it and you make it legal, because it's no longer a sin as far as you're concerned. It's now just whatever we decide on. You understand? It boils down to the actual subject of study. So here the Muslims ensured that every science that they studied had a virtue to it. Otherwise it just becomes a pointless study. So what is its fadl? What is its virtue? وَنِسْبَةٌ. What is its relationship with other sciences? وَالْوَادِعُ. What is its source? Where is it deriving its source from? Is it coming from the Quran? Is it coming from the Hadith? Is it coming from the way of the Salaf? Is it coming from maybe the scholars? Is it coming from physicality? Is it coming from quantity? Is it coming from the stars? Is it coming? Where is it deriving its source from? وَالِاسْمُ الْإِسْتِمْدَادُ حُكْمُ الشَّارِعِ. What is its name and what are its legal rulings? What is its name, from whence it draws, and what are its legal rulings? مَسَائِلٌ وَالْبَعْدُ بِالْبَعْدِ اكْتَفَى. What are the topics that it covers and all that which is contained in the subject of study? And then he says, وَمَنْ دَارَ الْجَمِيعَ هَذَا الشَّرَفَ. One who masters all of these, much honor is bestowed upon them, because those are now individuals who actually understood the science that they are studying. They know all the attributions of that science. Because you could still study the science without knowing any of these. Like, I mean, people, you've got graduates coming out of university, PhD level, they don't know where physics originated from. They don't know who was the founder of physics. They don't know what virtue physics is as a science. They don't know half the topics that are covered in the subject of study. They're the stuff that they have no clue about. But they have a doctorate, a piece of paper that says, doctorate in philosophy of physics. That person is not considered a master in this regard. He just has a piece of paper that he graduated with. So let's look at each one, inshallah. How much time do we have? Oh, okay, so we're good, inshallah. Hopefully we'll do maybe half of these and then we'll do the other half next week. So I'll read the explanation that Sheikh Hamza has put together, and then I'll explain step by step, inshallah. So the first thing is the hadith, the definition. He says, logic may be defined as the art which directs the very act of reason, that which enables us to advance with order, ease, and correctness in the act of reason itself. This is by Jacques Maritain. He was a French philosopher, and he's notable for his works on St. Thomas Aquinas. He also has written a few books on logic that are still being taught in some universities. So it is the art which directs the very act of reason. It directs the very act of reason. So it's what you're doing, what you're studying is the science of logic. And the science is going to help you do better logic, because as human beings, we all do logic. Whether that logic is 100% accurate, partially accurate, or fallacious. We are all doing logic. Like the student who went to the marketplace and then he finally realized they're all doing logic. Some might be doing it properly, some might be doing it incorrectly, some are fallacious, some get into conflict, some get into resolution, but they're all doing logic. That which enables us to advance with order, with ease and correctness in the act of reason itself. The second definition he gives is by At-Talib ibn al-Hajj al-Fasi. He was a Moroccan scholar, and this is from one of his textbooks on logic that they teach in Fez. As a science, it regulates the investigation of concepts and propositions in ways that enable one to arrive at a previously unknown proposition. Another definition you could give it is the science that enables us to conclude from something that is known. There's a missing preposition there. There should be a to something that was previously known. So from something that is known to something that was previously unknown. This is the principle that all the scholars held. Min al-ma'loom ila al-majhul. This is what it enables you to do, because it helps you build the foundation. And in the three operations of the mind, we'll look at this right now. It helps you build the first instance of what is it, and then it helps you then figure out how does it come to be, whether it's this or whether it's that. And then it helps you reach a position of asking the why question, and then that helps you to build more reasons. And then you build a syllogism, you build another one, you put the conclusions of those two together, and then you build another syllogism after that, you build another one, you build another one, and you keep building forward and expanding your understanding from those things that are known and going into the unknown. And the third definition by Robert J. Craig. I have no idea how to pronounce that last name of his. He was a professor in the University of Arizona, and he wrote the book Logic for Undergraduates or Logic for Graduates, something like that. It's a very nice book on logic. And that's what is being taught at the University of Arizona. He says, logic may be defined as the science that directs our mental operations so that they proceed with order, with facility and consistency toward the attainment of truth. The mental operations referred to in this definition are the three basic arts of the intellect, namely conception or simple apprehension, judgment, and reasoning. These are the three operations of the mind. This is it. This is all that the intellect does. In its universal concept, there are only three things that the intellect does, and does it in hierarchy. Simple apprehension, what you would call tasawwur as-sadij, judgment or ratification, what you call tasdeeq, and then reasoning, what you call qiyas. The three fundamental questions that the intellect asks is what, how, and why, or what, whether, and why. That's it. That's what the mind is doing. The other two questions, which are also fundamental, are more towards orientation. The orientation to space and time, or time and space. What the question that you would ask is when and where. So these are the five fundamental questions: what, how, why, or what, whether, why, when, and where. Those two are towards time and space, orientation. These three are the three questions that probe into reality to understand, and these correspond with the three functions of the mind: the grasping of a thing, the ratification of what it is, and then reasoning further into understanding more about it. We'll look at all this. Don't let this overwhelm you. This is just giving you the forest for the trees. We're going to go into each of these, so don't get confounded with the terms and everything. Those are the three definitions that they've put there, which is a very good definition. I would probably give it one more definition on that. I would give it the definition that it is the instrument that enables one to comprehend and increases the power of comprehension itself. And I believe that they might actually have put it in here somewhere. Could you do me a favor? On my study desk, there's a red book, red cover book. It's probably in one of the table shelves inside. Okay. Yeah, I wrote it down in my book. I didn't write it on this. But we can proceed inshallah by the time the book comes. So the second thing is al-ismu, which is the name. What is the name, and how is that name derived? Where is that name drawn from? Because the act of naming is a unique thing that the human being does. It has meaning. It's not just arbitrarily given because it sounds nice. So where does the name logic come from? In most schools today, what was formerly known as logic is now called critical thinking. See, they changed the name. And there's a reason why. This is part of this indoctrination, this changing of the perception of the human being in terms of what they learn. They now have critical thinking. So everything is skepticism to them. You see, everything needs critical thought. We do not accept any source as foundational truth. So based on that definition that they give, they basically eliminate the Quran, they eliminate the Hadith, they eliminate all scripture, they eliminate scholarly establishment, they eliminate all that. Each generation must critically probe an inquiry into Red, it's written, there's philosophy and metaphysics on my desk. It's a red cover book. Yeah. Where was I? Yes, thank you. Each generation basically probes their own inquiry into reality using critical thought. Redefining physics or redefining this, or they just come up with new theories. Every single generation comes up with, thank you very much, comes up with their own theories. Okay, this is it. This is a good definition. This is from my teacher. He said that logic strengthens the first, which is, actually no, this is here. In fact, I will give you this right now. Yes, inshallah. No. I will come to this definition. I'll give it to you properly, inshallah. You can write it down. Let's proceed with this. It's related to one of the principles, so I'll explain that principle. I'll explain the principle and then I'll give you that definition as well. In Arabic, logic is known as Mantiq because it contains three meanings: the ability to speak, the ability to comprehend universals, and the power of comprehension itself. That's the definition I was looking for. The Arabs chose this word, Mantiq, because logic strengthens the first. It strengthens the ability to speak. It enables the second to be more accurate, the ability to comprehend universals, and then endows perfection to the third. It perfects the power of comprehension. So it improves the ability to speak. It enables the comprehension of universals to be more accurate, and then endows perfection to the power of comprehension itself, increases the power of comprehension itself. Imam al-Ghazali called it Mihakkun Nadar, the touchstone of knowledge. He believed that it was the very cornerstone of knowledge. And he wrote 5 books on logic. Mihakkun Nadar was one of them. He wrote Mi'yarul Ilm, the criterion of knowledge. Miftahul Ulum is another one he wrote on knowledge. Mizanul Amal, the balance, is also what he wrote on logic. And the last one that he wrote was Qistasul Mustaqim, which he derived from the ayah in Surah Al-Shu'ara. They have written it here. Wazinu bil Qistasil Mustaqim. Weigh everything in an even balance. He believed that logic enabled balance of the mind. And in fact, he also believed that this ayah was an ishara pointing towards the importance of training the mind to work logically, because the world itself functions logically. I mean, everything in nature functions logically. If you, for example, I'm not sure who proposed this as a thought experiment, but somebody can look it up if you can find. He proposed that if there's a dog, a hunting dog that's chasing a rabbit during a hunt, and then the rabbit takes off, the dog is running after it, and then takes off on one of, reaches a junction where there are 3 roads that the rabbit has taken, and the dog did not see which road the rabbit took. And so the dog sniffs road A, doesn't get a scent, and then sniffs road B, picks up a scent. The dog, he said, will take off on road B without sniffing road C. Why does he do that? Because if A, then A, right? If not A, then B. If not A and B, then there's no need to go to C. We have already ascertained the truth on path B. So this is the natural function in which even the most rudimentary of animals will behave. Nature itself behaves in this way. It's a logical world. And so Imam al-Ghazali thought that this is an indication from the Quran, because the Quran keeps on reminding, أَفَلَا تَعْقِلُونَ, are you not going to reason? Are you not going to use your aql? Well, in order to use your aql, you need to know how to use your aql in terms of reasoning. And so he wrote this book as well, Qistasul Mustaqim. Aristotle referred to it as analytics, prior and posterior. It is divided into major, which is material logic, and minor, which is formal logic. Material logic sort of deals with actual, like you will be talking about things like the genus, the 5 predicables, the 10 categories. And formal logic deals with the forms of things like syllogisms. Where is it? Yeah, so it is divided into major material logic and minor logic, formal logic, depending on the subject matter. Yes, depending on what you are analyzing, you will apply this one or that one or both. Formal logic covers the validity or invalidity of the syllogism's form and structure. Yeah, I'm not supposed to talk about. Material logic covers the actual content of the syllogism, the actual thing itself. So I can look at this object and say, okay, it's from this genus, it's from this species, it's this, it's got this substance, it's got this quantity, this quality. That's all material logic. Then I can start doing like reasoning behind it. If there's water in it, then half of it is full. Then if half of it is full, that means half of it is empty. So I can do that kind of reasoning from that. That would be now formal logic that I'm applying. The late 19th century witnessed the emergence of symbolic or mathematical logic, what you now know as Boolean logic or Boolean algebra, what's used in computer science. That over time eclipsed the 2,000-year reign of traditional logic. Today, symbolic logic dominates it and is necessary in computer programming. And while it is useful, it can never replace traditional logic, which is still the basis of our legal system. This is what is now being applied as logic, and it's a very quantitative form of logic. It's basically mathematics. It's basically, plus and minus, divide and multiply. That's all there is to it, and it's useful insofar as the quantitative side of it is like computer science. But insofar as the way the human being reasons, and this is why you find in computer science they're not able to replicate the reason of the human being. Morals and ethics, for example. The AI systems, they're trying to make the AI systems learn how to feel emotion, how to reason like a human being, how to argue morals and ethics. The present systems that are there are just running on information that has already been provided to the AI system. It's a language learning model, right? So it looks at material that's already there. It looks at, okay, this is what Aristotle said about morals and ethics. This is what this one said, that one said. So it will just pull the pieces together and put it out there. Now, somebody who doesn't actually know how to reason will look at that and say, wow, this thing is intelligent. Look at how it reasons. It's not actually reasoning. Reasoning is when you are presented with a dilemma that only the human mind can solve, depending on how the human mind understands the conditions and the variables, which the computer cannot understand. But this is the kind of logic that is now being presented to sort of replace the older logic, which actually goes deeper, not just into the analytics of it, as Aristotle looked at it prior and posterior. It goes much deeper, and our legal system is established on that. Because the judge has to really look and understand the case. It's not just black and white. They really have to understand what is playing out. And then they have to formulate a decision based on that. If it's just plain black and white, then you could end up putting an innocent person in prison or chopping off the hands of an innocent person. So Umar ibn al-Khattab, for example, if he was to apply the kind of logic that is being taught in schools today, when there was famine, people would have lost their hands in large numbers. But he applied reason and suspended the had punishment because he reasoned that you cannot punish people for being driven to do what they are being necessitated to do. In other words, that man who's stealing would not have otherwise stolen if there was food to feed his family. He's stealing a loaf of bread because he needs to feed himself and his family. The punishment does not fit proportionate to the crime. It's out of necessity that he's doing it. He's not doing it to acquire wealth. See, he's applying that sort of traditional logic in there. And the logic that is being applied today, unfortunately, is what's resulting in so many wrongful convictions and decisions. Anyway, so that's the name. It's derived, the name is derived Mantiq because nataqa is a way of speaking that is got some sort of order to it and has got some reason and comprehensibility to it. So the Arabs called the science Mantiq because it refines speech itself, it refines the ability to comprehend universals, and refines the act of comprehension itself, expands that as well. This is why they called it Mantiq. And it's equivalent to the logic, which is logos, the knowing of, and this is why you find every science has got a logy to the end, right? So psychology, study of the psyche. And that study of is being studied in a logical fashion. The understanding what is it, what, how or whether, and why does it do that. The three operations of the mind. What's the time? Okay. Then we come to the subject, which is al-mawdu', the subject. The subject of logic covers the three operations of the mind: conceptualization, judgment, and reasoning through argumentation or demonstration. So understanding is the grasping of fundamental concepts. You know, you grasp the concept of a thing. So if I have an object here, you grasp the concept of what this object is. Whatever shape it might take, whatever color it might be, whatever other else might be associated with it, but you grasp the concept of a cup or a glass of water. So like even when this is now out of your field of view, you don't see it, and I ask you, could you get me a glass of water, please? You know what I'm talking about because you have a concept in your mind of what a glass of water is. This is what we mean when we say, what is it? Mahiyatun, what is it? The question is what? The target of the question is its itness. What is it? I don't want to know what its name is. I don't want to know what its dimensions are or where it originated from. All those things come secondary after you have established what it is first. That's what the grasping is. Simple apprehension is knowing it in its concept. Then applying judgment and ratifying a proposition. So from that apprehension of it, that initial grasping of its concept, you then make a proposition. I can say, it is a glass of water. That is an affirmative proposition. It is a glass of water. Or I can make a negative statement on that and say, it is not a glass of water. Obviously, one is false and one is true. But in either case, they are both propositions. And the proposition is the initial point. That's the first statement. That's not the conclusion. That's what begins the process of now authentication, verification, elimination, differentiation, all those things, until you come to the final conclusion of saying, you said your initial proposition was that it is not a glass of water. But we have looked at this and said that this is glass. We have looked at what's inside and that we have identified that as water. And therefore we conclude that it is a glass of water. So the proposition was rendered false at the end. Unfortunately, the biggest mistake that most people do, they will make a proposition and without going through the process of howness or whether this, whether that, they will conclude with that proposition as the conclusion. They will make a false judgment. This is what you call prejudging something, or you're prejudicial about something. You've concluded. You met the person for the first time, you didn't like his face, this one is a kafir. How do you know? No, I saw his face. That's the proposition you made, and it's still an assumption. But you didn't actually go through the process of knowing the individual, so that you could then come to a different conclusion to say that my proposition was wrong. My assumption about you was wrong. You see? This is the process, the second function of the mind, and that's applying judgment, ratifying the propositions. You met the proposition first, you go through the process of ratification until you have a final conclusion. Then using that, you now build a reasoning. So you build syllogisms that help you reason why you have applied that conclusion to that particular thing. This is the third function, the third operation of the mind. The reasoning and further analysis to increase understanding, whether you do it through argumentation, like you build an argument and say, this is how it is, this is how it is, this is how it is, because of this and because of that, therefore this. I've built an argument to give proof to my conclusion that I made, or I do it through demonstration. So in this case, I have done it through demonstration. If I make the proposition and say, this is not a glass of water, Or somebody says, this is not a glass of water, and I oppose that, contradict that statement, because there are propositions, then there are contradictions as well. And I say, this is a glass of water. I can demonstrate there is glass, and then I can demonstrate there is water inside. So this is through demonstration, I can prove my conclusion that this is a glass of water. These are the three operations of the mind, and that's the subject of logic. Okay, I have given the marker of time. I've been told that it is now past time. Can I get maybe so those are three. Yeah, let's okay, so we'll stop here then, inshallah. So the three operations, let me just conclude on this one piece here, and then inshallah we'll stop here and proceed with number 4, which is the benefit, al-thamra, next week inshallah. So the three mental operations, these are understanding or grasping, and that in Arabic is tasawwur, as-sadij. Then you have got judgment or ratification, and that's tasdeeq. And then you've got reasoning or analysis, and that is qiyas. And that is rational operation of the mind. It is required for any proposition, because logic is essentially based on propositions. Every single time we are making assumptions, and the assumptions cannot equate to the conclusion until the entire process has been verified. So, rational operation of the mind, these three processes are required to be performed in the appropriate order for rationality to be valid. This is an important axiom, whether you're studying logic or not. You cannot make an assumption and then conclude immediately as that assumption to be truth without going through the process of grasping the concept, ratifying all propositions regarding the concept, and then providing reason and then reasoning your proof or evidence through argumentation or through physical, tangible demonstration. What you would call burhan, you bring your tangible proof. This is what, like, this is what Muslims rely on, because like he mentioned over here that what was formerly known as logic is now called critical thinking. And this critical thinking, it's something that's, critical theory that comes from that is something that is very detrimental for those who are in university. You need to be very, very careful of this, because this is going to confound you. Really, it's going to plunge you into confusion, because the Muslims never took that position. You see, now everything is about skepticism, so you have to be very careful. The Muslims always applied epistemological realism, what you would call correspondence theory of truth. This is different from coherency of truth. Correspondence theory of truth is what we call mutabaqa. Mutabiq, iske mutabiq. If I'm calling it a glass of water, iske mutabiq. This is a glass of water. This is the reality of it. You see, if I call this a plate of food, then that's false. And I cannot start saying, no, let's critically examine this. Let's think about it. No, I can't say that. That's nonsense. You see? So this is mutabaqa, corresponding to reality. Ultimately, all assumptions of the mind should correspond to reality. Otherwise, it is just an assumption and it cannot be converted into truth. Even if you derive a theory from it and you've constructed the theory and you've done all these things, it is still just a theory. It cannot be concluded as final truth. Truth or falsehood is determined by how it corresponds with reality and how it describes reality. St. Thomas Aquinas said, Veritas est adequatio rei intellectus. Truth is the adequation of things and intellect. The adequation, the mergence of the two. What the intellect comes up with should match with what reality is. Otherwise, you are in phantasm. So, inshallah, the modern world, unfortunately, and this is why we're studying this subject as well, because there's just insanity going on out there, and it's happening right from kids and at their schooling level. They're being trained to think as that truth is something that is just purely subjective, that has got no epistemological foundation, that has got no absolute truth to it. It's just whatever we come up with and decide upon and agree upon, that becomes the truth of the day. And that can change tomorrow if we feel like it, and it can change the other day. You see, this is the kind of indoctrination that is going on and happening at a very early age. So that by the time people go into university, they've got no foundation of understanding whatsoever, and they come out even stupider than they were going in, even though they may have a piece of paper to say otherwise. And that's very unfortunate. Anyway, let's stop here, inshallah, take a quick break. And it's Maghrib time. It will be Maghrib time for me in about 2 minutes. I will hear the adhan. So we'll take a break for Maghrib, and I can pray, and then we'll resume for questions and answers, inshallah ta'ala. Jazakumullahu khairan. Alhamdulillah. Okay. AbuBilaal. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. AbuBilaal minash-shaytanir rajim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Let's proceed, inshallah. Now, go ahead. Who is ready?
Ustad, should I start unmuting the students?
Yes, go ahead, inshallah. Anyone here also, if you have a question, just put up your hand. Or you can write down your questions if you want. Because the people here, they don't want their voices to be heard in the cameras, so they're very quiet.
Shakila Riaz, you may please unmute yourself and ask the question.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
I have 3 questions. 2 are really small, and third one is a question. If I understood it correctly, you were mentioning some Indian or Hindi script, and then you translate it as like, truth is the adequation of intellect.
I didn't get that.
Okay, truth is the adequation of intellect.
Yes.
And something.
Yes.
What is that something? I missed that.
Anything, whatever thing that you are examining or investigating, perceiving, yes. So that was from St. Thomas Aquinas. He said, Veritas est adequatio rei et intellectus. Rei is thing. So anything, whatever, whether it's a concept, it's a proposition, something someone said, you heard something, whatever information coming into you, any part of the world, any event that is taking place, the assumption that is created by the mind in trying to understand what it is must be coherent with what its reality is. Yeah. So what is its reality is what the first piece is, the tasawwur, the concept of what is it, meaning what is its reality, what is its essence, is the first inquiry of the mind. So the tasawwur comes from surah. You know, you say in Urdu you have tasveer, right? That's the image, tasveer. The tasawwur is the imago that is made in the mind. So now if I say glass of water, Because I held up the glass of water many times, if I just say glass of water, there's a certain image that's in your mind about that, in reference to what I am talking about. That image in your mind, that's the tasawwur, means that you have grasped it. That's the grasping now. That grasping must be coherent with the thing itself. They must be linked together. It can't be that what you're assuming about it or what the image is different from what the thing is in reality. Yeah, I hope you understand that. That's what it means. That it should be coherent with what's in reality. Mutabaqa.
And the second one is, you were mentioning, if it's not personal, I don't know, or if it's a book. You said there is like philosophy and the metaphysics. You were mentioning some of your book
No, that's one.
of
That's
red color.
that's.
I just know if it's a book or
No,
if it's
that's
not a
my
book.
book. That's my book.
Okay.
That I was.
I just wanted
Yeah,
to know the writer.
that's my book from my studies. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And now my question is like we have three acts of mind: the sabr, tasdeeq, and qiyas.
Yes.
So like this qiyas, I don't know what exactly in Arabic it means,
Mhm.
and it answers the whys.
Yeah.
And is it like it does it mean like why the judgment is true or false? It is this why or another why?
It's the why question of. So qiyas is reasoning. That's what qiyas is in Arabic. Qiyas is reasoning, and it's a very broad term because it really depends on what context it's applied. So qiyas means something slightly different in fiqh. It means something slightly different in usul al-fiqh. It means something different in kalam or in aqidah. But essentially what it does is it is a motion of the mind from the known elements to the unknown now. It's probing an inquiry to that which is not known of a thing. So that's the why question. The why in this case is not cause effect. You see, in English, you've got, if you ask somebody a question, why, typically the answer will be because of. And because of meaning be or to be the cause of, or being the cause of that. It's not that causal effectual sort of meaning. It's the kind of reasoning that, see, if you look at what's happening in Gaza, for example, right now, we know what is happening. We've determined the what of it. We know how it's happening. We have determined the process that it is undergoing. Whether it's this or whether it's that, we can still debate those aspects. The why question is now to ask, why is it happening? So people come up with different reasons for that now. It's happening because the Zionists, they don't like the Palestinians. It's happening because Jews are hatred of Arabs. It's happening because they're trying to do this. It's happening because they're trying to do that. So all those are the whys now. See, all those are probing inquiry into the unknown aspect of it, what you cannot actually see. What's the real cause? What's hiding behind that? That's what qiyas does now. You start building up these syllogisms and argumentations to understand the whyness of a thing. So we know what the human being is. We see the human being physically. We know how the human being comes into existence. We know the process of birth and all that, the growth, the maturity. We know all that. So now we ask the more existential question. Why does he exist? That's not something that you can determine from any theory or fact or anything. That's more a probing of an inquiry into an unknown. And there are many different arguments that can be made as to the purpose of the human being. Why does he exist? I hope I answered that question. So that's the why question. That's what qiyas does. It's the reasoning.
Yeah, okay, I got it.
Mm-hmm.
So may Allah reward you for these classes. I'm really enjoying it. I'm really,
MashaAllah.
hopefully I will take advantage of it.
MashaAllah. Inshallah.
Assalamu
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
Zeba, you may please unmute yourself now and ask the question.
Assalamu alaikum. So basically, it's I don't know. Because okay, actually I do know it, but I don't know how to explain it. Okay, so I've got a couple of questions, and I'm a bit confused. So yeah, I'm a bit confused. So you have sticks, right? So you've got a tool stick, and then you've got you have logic, which you need to help you understand that, and Great. So I'm just wondering, like, why do Muslims come to different conclusions? Because it depends, like, you know, is logic, like, where did it derive from? Like, say, I don't know, like, certain people who are so quick to judge and, like, so quick to say this guy's, like, he does wrong. Wait, I'm just trying to think how. Alright, so you've got Akidah, and then you've got faith, and then you've got logic that you usually help you understand faith. So, if that's derived from the Quran, how come there is like differences in people like don't come to the same conclusion? I think that's my question.
I'm not understanding your question.
I don't understand it either. Wait, so basically, why do people come to different conclusions? Because you have logic, and then it helps you understand the Quran.
Well, different conclusions arise because of subjective reasoning. At the end of the day, we're all looking at the same thing, we're looking at the same reality, but we're all looking at it from our own subjective point of view. And that gives a certain perspective. And so, for example, if I was to hold up an object that is, say, of this shape, and I was to ask somebody right in front of me, what shape is this? Assuming that you can only see that. And so that person might conclude and say, that's a rectangle.
Yeah.
And then I was to ask somebody else on this side, say, what shape is this? Because that's what they can see. They can't see this or that. They might say, oh, that's a square. Well, subjectively, this person is right. And subjectively, that person is also right. They both come to the conclusion, but the conclusions are variant. They're different. Now, until they both look at this thing in a more objective perspective, meaning if I now was to give it a different angle, then you might then conclude and say, oh, okay, so it's not a flat surface to begin with. It's a three-dimensional object, and one side is a square, one side is a rectangle. So this is now a cube, or I don't know what the shape would be. But they now come to a different understanding of it because now they're looking at it objectively. And that's unfortunately where a lot of people, everyone looks at a thing subjectively and they come to a subjective conclusion. Now, the way logic works is you've got three components to it. You've got the logic itself, which is where the equation is built in the mind. Then you've got its conclusion on one side, and then you've got its assumption on the other side. The conclusion is dependent on the way the logic is constructed. The logic itself is dependent on the assumption that is made. So it all depends on the assumption and how accurate the assumption is. The logic will always function logically. In other words, the equation will always balance itself out. 2 plus 2 will always be 4. 3 plus 3 will always be 6. 1 plus 1 will always be 2. You see, the equation will always be the same. The conclusion can be true or false. It's dependent on the assumption that was made prior. And I'll give you another example on this. I always quote this example from the Quran. Iblis looked at Adam's form and he developed a certain assumption about him and then drew the conclusion on that, I'm not going to bow or prostrate in front of this thing that is made of black mud. Min salsalin min hama'in masnoon. I'm not going to bow or prostrate in front of this. Why? I am made of a superior element. So when he was questioned about it, this is how he built his reasoning. He said, Ana khayrun minhu, khalaqtani min nar wa khalaqtahu min tin. So his syllogism is very simple. I am better than him. You made me of fire, you made him of clay. What his reasoning here is that fire is better than clay. I am made of fire, he's made of clay. Therefore, I am better than him. Now, as far as the logic is concerned, the equation is correct. Because when you look at the properties of fire and you look at the properties of clay, anyone will come to the conclusion that fire is better than clay because clay cannot override fire. But fire can cause damage to clay. Fire is more energy. Fire has got more fluidity, dynamic. Fire is much more than what clay can do. Clay is just there. If it falls, it breaks. So the logic is sound. But because of his assumption, his conclusion was false. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did it through demonstration. See, I gave you an instruction to obey. I gave him an instruction to obey. He disobeyed and you disobeyed. When he disobeyed, he turned back and asked for forgiveness. When you disobeyed, you were arrogant about it. You are not better than him, he is better than you. Why? Because you are jealous of his status as a Khalifa. That's where it originally stems from. And you examined that and you said that he should not be the Khalifa. Why is he the Khalifa? I should be the one. I have been here before him. I am the one who has been given rank to the angels. Why is he the Khalifa? Well, you missed out the point. It had nothing to do with your physical compositions, because the concept of the Khalifa is one who is responsible, one who can be held accountable for his actions. That is the Khalifa. And so when he made a mistake and I held him accountable, he admitted his mistake. And he recognized my superiority over his. You, on the other hand, denied your mistake and then you are blaming me about it, because that's what he did. Bima aghoitani, because you led me astray. That's what Iblis said. You see? So his assumption was false and therefore his conclusion was nullified. But as far as the logic is concerned, the logic is sound. You can't argue with that logic. This is what we are looking at. Every individual does logic, but the correspondence with reality is sometimes missing. So that person's assumption that this shape was rectangular, insofar as the logic is concerned, is correct. And that person's assumption that this is square, their assumption was correct. But their perspectives do not correspond with the reality of the object. And that's why, even though their logic is sound, their conclusions were false. Logic is just an instrument that takes you from point A to point B. It's not the final thing. You see? It has to be used as an instrument. And if it is used correctly, it will improve the power of comprehension. It will improve the power of understanding. Because you also then question your own proposition. Okay, I see it as a rectangle, but there remains the possibility that it could be a square. And there remains the possibility that there could be another angle to look at it. This is another part of logic. Inshallah, I'll talk about necessaries, possibilities, and impossibilities. This is also part of logic. And then there are also rules. So we'll look at all those in detail. I hope I answered your question in that.
Yeah, actually, it does make sense. Yeah, I think I understand it now. I'm really sorry, sir. This might be a really big question, but I'm just wondering what's the difference between fiqh and jurisprudence?
The difference between fiqh and jurisprudence is a matter of incorrect translation. So people have translated fiqh as jurisprudence, which is, I believe, is the wrong translation of it. Because the Muslim world was governed by the fiqh, but fiqh itself is not jurisprudence. It doesn't just pertain the law, it pertains to all aspects of the religion. So a faqih is somebody, the fuqaha are those who understood. Before Islam, the word itself was associated with shepherds, Bedouin shepherds. The faqih was the one who could look at his flock and know which of his sheep were pregnant by just looking. Because he understood, like he could read the signs and he could put the known elements together and then derive that conclusion by understanding. And that's what it is. So in the hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said that the one whom Allah loves gives him yufaqihu fid deen, gives him an understanding of the religion. There are people who translated that and says makes him better at fiqh. It doesn't make him better at fiqh. Fiqh is a science that is then developed from an understanding of the Sharia. So the fiqh is an understanding of the Sharia, of the law. And on that you also have usulul fiqh, which are the principles of understanding the Sharia. Jurisprudence is now a later term that came in after the development of the English language. You have to remember that these terms that we're using in the English language did not come about up until like the 17th century when English started coming up. English is a recent language. So associating these terms to that, it's not, that's why I don't like translations at all. They just take you away from the source meaning. Like the usuli, if you look at the word usul, it's translated as fundamentalism. And then that's given a negative connotation. These are extremists. So usuliyon are fundamentalists, which is a very bad translation. You could have come up with something else, because usul is like literally the heart of our understanding of the Sharia. But anyway, did that make sense? The difference between fiqh and jurisprudence. Jurisprudence is more to do with the law and how the law is applied. But that's just one portion of fiqh. Fiqh is a much, much broader thing in our tradition. Jurisprudence is just one portion, where you have things like disputes, marriages, for example, divorces. You have inheritance and the dynamics of inheritance. Then you've got crime on this side and how crime is dealt with. You've got property and property disputes. Those are the areas where now you say jurisprudence comes in. But then you've got a much, much broader aspect of fiqh. Understanding how the salah is performed, why it's performed, how it's performed, fasting, understanding how to apply the law itself in different circumstances. You see, if I do this, is it valid? Is it invalid? Is it okay? Can I do it like this? Can I do it like that? That's what fiqh is about. Yeah.
There are no more questions.
No more questions. We're done for today. Like everyone understood everything that we did today. I mean, you guys can, no questions from you guys? Subhanallah.
So there are two questions I would like
Yes.
to ask you.
Go ahead.
Is there a possibility you can ask them in person?
No, go ahead if you want to ask now, or if you want to ask me later, that's fine.
So when you were mentioning that there are very much differences in the translation.
Mhm.
Actually, there is another question. It's okay if I take that first. Sneha, you may ask the question.
Mhm.
I'll continue after a bit, sir.
No problem.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
So my question is, you stated that in colleges now, people are doing more of a critical thinking as opposed to logics, and then it tends to misguide people. And nowadays, we send our children to schools from kindergarten or preschool, especially in the West. So I guess my question is, how do we prepare our children to not fall in the trap? And I'm talking more to parents that maybe are homeschooling and have never exposed their children to schools and those ideologies. So if we want to send our children to school, do we prepare them kind of like in a way informally teach them what you're talking about and then send them off to college? Because these young minds, you don't want to rush them into an institution where they will be misguided or the chances are really high.
Yeah. I mean, that's a real problem, not just in the West, everywhere in the world, actually. It's a real issue. It's a crisis of knowledge that the Muslim Ummah is going through and unfortunately, we've done it to ourselves. We abandoned the curriculum that the Muslims had and adapted the curriculum proposed by the West. And that's what I was raised in that same thing. And it's very difficult because fundamentally, any institution that a child goes to, that child will be indoctrinated. Whether it's a Muslim school or Islamic school or whatever school it might be, whether it's in the West or it's in the East, they will undergo an indoctrination, because the education is not being given insofar as education itself, but insofar as cultivating individuals ready for the workforce is what the end product is, the resultant. That's what they're gearing the children towards, which was never the case with the Muslim Ummah. They taught for the sake of learning, and learning was done, in twofold. There was the ta'aleem, and then there was tarbiyah that went with it. There was the teaching, and then there was the nurturing as well. And the teacher was both, was a nurturer and a teacher. So, what we have now is basically sending children to schools where they're indoctrinated with preconceived notions, which themselves have got no basis in absolute truth, because those who build their curriculums themselves do not believe in truth. You see, anyone who comes out of university at the age of 24, 25, ultimately, and still does not understand why they exist in this world or what their purpose is, that person has essentially wasted their youth, because it is in this age of youth that these questions are really asked, right? Children ask these questions. Why are we here? Why this? Why that? Why that? These are real questions that they're pre-equipped with from a fitrah perspective. And adults are not able to answer those questions because they themselves never understood them. They never discovered those answers. They spent their entire youth in the indoctrination process. They know everything about the world as it is today. You see, they know everything about accounting and lawyering and doctoring and engineering and all these things, but they don't even know why they're here. So this is part of the nurturing that parents have to undergo. But the only way you can actually undergo it is if you learn yourself, if you study yourself, because you can't teach what you don't know. So I believe, I'm of the mindset that we really need to return back to the roots of our tradition. If we talk about a revivification of Islam, not a reformation, but a revival of Islamic studies, Islamic sciences. Basically what Imam al-Ghazali did, and his book is titled Ihya Ulumuddin, a revival of the sciences of the religion. He did it at his time. It's something that we need to do in our time, and really, it's not something that we can just achieve ourselves. Now, as far as every individual in their household, there are certain things that you can put in place that will at least enable the child's mind to flourish. Because the one thing that you can do as a parent to really destroy your child is to corrupt their innocence. That's the one thing that you can, and you wouldn't even know that that's what you're doing. It doesn't matter what education they receive afterwards. Ultimately, they are going to be able to come up, and their fitrah is what you want to nurture, regardless of what information they receive, because they will only retain 5% of their information anyway when they finish. But they will still be asking those questions. That's what you want to nurture. And destroying a child's innocence is the one thing that will just destroy them completely. That's because that's what keeps them actually in that state of sanity. And we parents, unfortunately, we do a lot of things that destroy a child's innocence. One clear example is putting your child in front of devices. That in itself destroys their capacity to abstract from reality. Inshallah, I'm going to talk about this abstraction. We spoke about this in the previous course, but I'm going to talk about it more in terms of logic. Parents tend to laugh at their children when they make mistakes. That's something that also destroys their innocence. A child makes a mistake, it's something funny, it's hilarious, and you laugh. Don't do that. Even though it's funny. But your child was not given to you so that you can have a comedy show and you can make fun of. That's still a human being, that's another soul. And your job as a parent is to nurture that, not to laugh at that. When you laugh at that, it cripples their confidence and then destroys that innocence in them, because they will never learn from it then. There are many things that parents, if you just take a step back and just nurture your children, because Nurturing is the one thing that they're not getting in school. I'll guarantee you this. It's not about the please, thank you, be nice to your neighbor and all that stuff. That's not nurturing. That's akhlaq. The real adab comes from the mother's lap, meaning the real adab begins at home. And that nurturing, it falls on the parents. You need to nurture your children in a way that brings out their inner innocence and makes it flourish. So that regardless of what they encounter in the world outside, their fitrah is not suppressed. That's their innocence. That doesn't get destroyed. It doesn't get diminished. I mean, I could go on this. It's a long subject. It's a long topic. And it requires a lot of thought and deliberation on it. Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much. I actually listened to your talk about parenting, and it was very great information. But I'm talking more about some parents like homeschool their children, and they have a goal of nurturing their beings and not even shove the education on their throats. So their approach is very gentle. However, when the time comes and let's say these children want to go to college, this is where the fear comes. It's like, oh man, what are they going to teach over there?
Yeah.
Are they going to now misguide my child that I've worked so hard with Allah's power, So there's this fear of shifting them the other direction. So is there a way to strengthen them so much that when they do go to college at a very, very early age, so they can distinguish these and just be like, okay, this is false information, this is the right information.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you this, insofar as homeschooling is concerned, if you're going to homeschool your children and teach them the same curriculum that is being taught in school, then you're not achieving anything. The only difference is a change of location. That's all there is. Only the four walls around are different. That's it. You're still indoctrinating them with the same concepts and the same preconceived notions, and it doesn't improve their thought. You might as well just send them to school. Now, if you're going to homeschool them in the sense that you're going to teach them those subjects, but not following the same curriculum that is outlined by these authorities, because you can still learn the subject itself. You can still teach your child mathematics. You can still teach them all these different subjects, but teach them in a sense that would be more oriented towards the way the religion would teach these subjects, because that's how the Muslims studied. And teach them alongside with that, teach them the religion itself, putting a greater emphasis on what you're teaching as far as religion is concerned than these sciences. Because again, you're nurturing the child. You see, the language that children speak, they don't speak the same language that we speak. We are the ones who learn language. Children acquire language, and it's all language. All this is language. Every science is a language. Every subject is a language. It's a collection of words. Those words have meanings, and those meanings are what you're teaching them. So it is a language. Children don't learn language. Children acquire language, and it's all based on how you give them that acquisition. How are they going to absorb that information, and how will they prioritize it within themselves? You see? So your nurturing should be in such a way that you give them a higher priority of the religion as compared to those secular sciences, in that they understand by the time they're actually getting into higher grades and stuff, they understand where their priorities lie. This is how the Muslims were always taught. They did not go to colleges and universities to learn how to become engineers and to learn how to become lawyers and accountants so that they can get a job. The schooling system, the curriculum that is produced by every state in the world is a schooling system that gears their population towards becoming productive members of society. i.e., they need to finish school, go out, get a job, pay their taxes so that we can flourish as a country. This is political ideology. That's what the entire curriculum is designed for that. It's not designed for you to reach an existential truth through your learning. That's what you want to nurture at an early stage. That existential truth only comes through the religion. This is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying. I have fulfilled my obligation to you by giving you Al-Islama Dina. I've given you Islam as your religion. And I've given you a center down this entire book with everything that you need to know is in there. كَذَلِكَ نُفَصِّلُ الْآيَاتِ. We have this, likewise, we have explained every ayah in this Quran. Every sign has been explained. That's what you want to nurture in them because it maintains their innocence. Yes?
You don't stop the nurturing when they start college. Parents are only focusing on the nurturing when they're young, and then they're sending them to college. And then the kids are on their own because mentally, no matter how much you keep them inside the house, legally they know they're on their own. But the nurturing is more needed at that time than it is when they're younger because they're so innocent when they're young anyway.
Yeah, well, it's based on a false assumption of what nurturing means. If your understanding of nurturing is basically feeding them, clothing them, buying them things, and making them happy, then you have a wrong understanding of what nurturing really is. Nurturing goes above and beyond that, and it's a lifetime thing. It doesn't stop, as you said, it doesn't stop with, okay, they finished college, they turn 18 now, it's time for you to go. You're an adult now, take care of yourself. Bye-bye.
You have to enter the environment one way or the other.
Exactly. So it has to be a continual thing. Now, if you're homeschooling, for example, in this case, every homeschooling parent knows that even if you're a university graduate, you're still going to have to relearn everything. Every new grade, you're going to have to learn everything anyway. And I've spoken to many parents who've done homeschooling. They have a hard time because they actually have to, each year, they sort of have to study the subjects again just so that they can catch up with teaching the children. Well, it shouldn't stop just because they finished their elementary. It shouldn't stop once they finish their high school. And neither should it stop when they are going into university either. And this is why you cannot be a teacher, even if you're a parent who is homeschooling, you can't be a teacher if you have not mastered the sciences that you're going to teach. So part of how you're going to make this work is to develop your own education and to increase your own self in learning. And you are much better off studying the Islamic sciences than studying the secular sciences, because the secular sciences is just information acquired. And they can acquire that information from anywhere. The religious sciences is not information acquired. It's not something you can just look up in a website and learn. No, you actually have to study. You literally have to put in the time, the effort. You have to learn, you have to memorize, you have to commit. It's a lot more integrated. That's what you want to focus your attention on, so that that's what you can then impart unto them. So when they go into their high school and their college and they start learning about things like the theory of evolution. I'll give you an example for myself. When I was in high school and just started studying biology, at that time, the theory of evolution was just a theory. It was a subtopic in biology. And there was a scholar who had come visiting, and he gave a lecture, and I posed this question to him at the masjid. He gave me a very, rudimentary answer, Basically what he told me was, lower your gaze, close your ears, is what he told me. There's nothing else that he could offer at that time that could enable me to understand. And it's much later on that I came to realize, I don't want to know about theory of evolution and its refutation from somebody who has just studied Aqidah. I want to know about that from somebody who has studied Kalam and has studied biology as well, that can then guide me and give me advice as to how I should deal with this in school. Now, at that time when I was in school, like I said, it was just a small topic. Now, if you look at the textbooks that are printed, this is the fundamental assumption in biology. You cannot study biology now if you do not, first of all, accept this as a valid premise that we are beings that have evolved and that everything biological has undergone biological evolution. How are you going to deal with this? You can't deal with it rudimentary aqidah. What are you going to do? You're going to give your children a fatwa based on fiqh? Oh, it's haram, don't do it. How are they, when they start countering you with questions and asking you all these questions, how do you deal with it? Which mufti is going to help you give counsel to your children to help them understand these assumptions. When that child wants to study medicine, but they have to study this subject, they can't get out of it. How do you guide them? The only way you can guide them is if you increase yourself in knowledge as well. You need to be able to have the knowledge, study the sciences themselves as they were taught by the Muslim scholars, and then have the wisdom by which you are going to give them reason to help them understand. There's no way you're going to go into the Quran and find an ayah if you don't even know how to do tafsir or how to look at the Arabic terminology. These are things that we have to study as parents. I'm not speaking just, I'm talking about everyone, me included. I mean, my son the other day was asking me very difficult questions. He's 5 years old. And I just had to say, you know what, just leave it for now. Let me think and then I'll get back to you with an answer. Children nowadays, they're exposed to a lot of information and they come up with all these questions. And we're stumped and we can't answer them. Ultimately, what's going to transpire once they start becoming independent in their thought, they're going to either rebel against you and they'll take on their own path. This is how we lose our generations, our future generations. Anyway, like I said, this is a very broad topic. So I believe I owe you 2 other sessions on 2 other topics, but this is something you will have to arrange as a separate session altogether. And I will be able to more, better explain and engage in conversation on this subject. But again, I'll leave it to you guys. You guys have to make the arrangements. You make the arrangements and you get together, you select a time, and then I will make time and come and speak on the subject. So anyway, I hope at least I gave you something that you could go with.
Jazakallah, Ustad. There are 3 more questions. Should I hand you?
Go ahead.
Yasmin, please unmute yourself and ask the question.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
Jazakallah khair, Ustad. The question is like, you talk about the Mantiq we are learning through Arabic, the religious Mantiq probably. So you talk about the other Mantiq, other languages, they have their Mantiq and then those were translated into Arabic. So you think that we were messed up over there, like we learned those Mantiq and then we transformed our education over those Mantiq and we literally left our way of learning. So actually the thing is that I was taking classes with different Darul Uloom like Darul Uloom Ashrafiya in Pakistan and all that. So when they teach us things like that over there, we are not literally able to ask them anything. So they kick you out from the class by asking questions. So that's why we really hesitate to ask questions over here. But I'm glad that you always ask that, or you guys understood everything. So it really wakes me up, and I said, okay, let me ask a question. So I was just talking about those because I learned all that. So I really don't want to focus on that, what I have learned already. But what I'm learning right now, I just want to know that the Mantiq we are learning like right now, did we have the influence of those other Mantiq too over our education or whatever we have learned, or maybe our those scholarly Darul Uloom kind of teachers and all that, because sometimes they say, okay, these are from other books, these are from other languages, but we just wanted to give you the example of this, so that's why we are teaching you.
What we are studying this as Mantiq is, there's no such thing as Islamic logic. This Mantiq is actually from the Greeks. It's what you call Aristotelian logic. The text itself also is a Guji. I'll talk about the text more when we finish the 10 principles, then we'll go into the text. But that's the standard text. And this was Greek logic that was developed by Aristotle. He's the founder of the science, and we'll talk about the founder next week, inshallah. The Indian culture, they had a type of their own logic as well, because Indians themselves were very good. They were very good at mathematics also. The many mathematical concepts that the Indians came up with. Romans were very good at logic as well, but their logic also came from the Greeks. And what happened with the Muslims is that when you see, people ask the question, they say logic is haram. And one of the arguments that they make against that is that the Salaf never did logic, so why should we? That's a bid'ah. They say, well, if you look at the Salaf, the 3 generations, there are many arguments that can be made as to why they didn't study the science of logic. But that doesn't mean that they weren't doing logic. And you look at many of the arguments that are made by the Salaf in those 3 generations, they're very logically sound. Like Umar's judgment of suspending the had punishment, it's a very sound reasoning. So they didn't do logic, they didn't study the science of logic, and they didn't study many of these sciences because they were already in proximity of the Quran. This is the argument that I make. They were already in the presence of the Prophet ﷺ. Anything that they required was given to them straight as a direct explanation from the Prophet of Allah. And they understood the Quran directly as it was. What the Muslims did later on, and Imam al-Ghazali makes this argument, is that people's minds started deteriorating. The further away from revelation that we get, the less our intellective capability. If we look at scholars in the past, you've got scholars like Al-Farabi could speak 70 languages. Name one person who can speak 10 languages today. Al-Farabi could speak 70 languages. He had a complete mastery of the science of music, grammar, rhetoric, poetry, the Quranic sciences, tafsir, hadith. He had mastered the madhahib. He had mastered logic, that he was considered the second father of logic. These were individuals of higher intellect compared to us. So Imam al-Ghazali argues at that time, and he says that over time people's intellect start reducing, especially when they are distanced from the revelation, the point of time, revelation in that point of time. You see, we are not just in motion through space, we are in motion through time. So the further away we are getting from revelation, the weaker our understanding of it goes, and therefore the Muslims started developing the sciences that help us maintain that high intellection. So what they did is they took Mantiq, for example, they took logic from the Greeks, and in the initial stages there were a lot of mistakes that were made. This was normal, and over time it started going through refinement. Until now what we have is what you would call Islamic logic, but in essence it is just traditional logic, and it's the same logic that is studied or was studied across the world. Darul Ulum, I'm afraid, sorry to say, and if anyone else is here from Darul Ulum, I'm very sorry for if I come out as offensive on that, but Darul Ulum is just, Sheikh Imran calls them schoolboy, and I agree with that term, schoolboy. They don't teach logic. And this idea that, oh, you can't ask any questions, that's not a learning environment, that's indoctrination.
How is it different from
Yeah, how is that different from a secular education in a concentration camp? That's what it is. That's not religious education. I'm sorry, but that's how they teach. That they're not teaching anything, and they're actually going to be held accountable for that mannerism. So the logic that we're studying, and we'll look at this, if you do a preliminary reading of this text that Sheikh Hamza has translated, the annotations that are made here are made by Sheikh Faraz, who is also a teacher at Zaytuna College. He gives you examples directly from the Quran. He shows you, this ayah, see how it can be analyzed logically, this ayah, how it can be. And once you understand that, you actually realize, oh, okay, yeah, actually that makes a lot of sense. Now I understand the ayah much better, rather than just having to look at a translation of it. This is what logic is supposed to do, and this is why we're studying it, because it will help us increase the power of comprehension. But in any case, we're still going to go through the rest of the 10 principles. There are still more arguments that have to be made over the next 7 principles that are remaining. And all these questions, inshallah, you will be able to understand them better. Because the debates have been going on over the centuries. Some say it's prohibited, some say it's not, some change their position from prohibited to permissible. Some say it is a requirement, some say it is not a requirement, some say it is wajib, some say no, it is not wajib. So there are many differences of opinion and there are reasons as to why that is. But we'll go through all those, inshallah, in more detail next week. Is there someone else?
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
Sir, thank you for this course. I'm just catching up with the last 2 sessions. So please forgive me if it's, I've done something. So forgive me if it's a repetition of what you already covered last week. But my question is related to
Sorry, come again? Sorry, come again?
Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
My question is related to the Hikam. So we are studying that what we present to Allah is very different from what He presents to Himself. Like what we try to present to Him is our deeds, while what He gives to us is marifah. So in creation, when we look at creation, even though it is non-existent and it cannot veil someone as supreme as Allah, but through creation we can get a glimpse of our Creator, right? So my question is, I'm getting a little bit not confused, but it's an Urdu word. If you understand the word hebat.
Hebat. No, not familiar with that.
The fear, the awe, as in contrast with the love or wada. For instance, we talk about the love of our Creator, which is manifest or which is seen in the blessings that He gives to us, versus the judgment He might take upon us, or the retribution He might from us.
Yeah.
That fear. So how do we, what is this stage that a person goes through? Because, it's, when you study the Hikam and you study all the aphorisms, you realize that it's something that we're trying to understand is vastly superior to what our mind is capable of.
Yes, well, the nature of God is far more beyond what we could conceptualize in ourselves. And He is, it is difficult to even put that in words. He is the greatest unknown, yet the most easily known. Okay, that doesn't work. But like to know His essence, to know Him in His nature, that's something that's beyond us to see what is God. We can't. So by the way, everything that we're studying in logic here does not apply to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It doesn't. This is all with creation only. Anything that we're studying in logic, all the concepts, rules, principles, everything is pertaining our created world. Do not apply this in trying to figure out who Allah is and how the qadar works and all that stuff. This logic is our worldly logic. It doesn't extend to the spiritual realms. And I'm going to talk about that next week, inshallah. In the Hikam, he speaks about, I think you are referring to Hikam number 8. See, He makes Himself known to you, and you are presenting, your deeds don't really measure. Yes, what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives you as the creation, there is nothing that you can give in comparative to that. He gave you existence. No matter how big a masjid you build and however much gold you use in that, will never compare to what He has given you. Because at the end of the day, he doesn't need that. And that's essentially what the Hikam is trying to give you, is a vast contrast between you as creation and him as the creator. And then in that vast contrast, he's trying to show you how easy it is to reduce the distance between you and him. That's what essentially he's trying to do in the Hikam. All the aphorisms, once we do the whole thing and look at it in the broader picture, that's essentially what he's going to speak. There's another Hikam he's going to say, don't think that it's difficult to draw closer to him. It's not. It's the easiest thing you can do. It's easier than breathing. It's easier than opening your eyes. It's easier than taking a sip. To draw closer to him is the easiest thing you can do. And yet, there is this distance between you and him. So even though there is this contrast, drawing closer to him and interacting with him as creation to creator is much more easier than you could possibly think. I hope that...
Sorry. Where do you find that balance between our love for Allah and the fear of being put to judgment because our sins are too heavy? So how do we find a balance between that? Between optimism, hope, and fear?
He's going to talk about hope as well. We're gonna look at all those. He's going to talk about hope. He's going to talk about balance. He's going to talk about relationship. He's going to talk about a lot of other things as well, inshallah. But I think maybe you're reading the translation that was provided in the group. That translation will not give you much. It's just a plain translation. To understand it, you really have to go in. Like my translation are several lines. Sometimes half the page is just the translation because I've got like parentheses and brackets and all these other things going on here. That's why I didn't put translation in the document that I gave. It's only the Arabic. So that translation, don't adhere to that translation. We're going to go in detail because the words he's using, he's speaking very poetically and rhetorically. It's very difficult to translate that. He's not giving you clear-cut statements. He's giving you something that's more nuanced and has got multiple layers in it. So we'll go more in depth into that.
And one more thing, you told us about the art of intellection, the tasawwur, the tasbih, and the qiyas. So is this order correct? Because shouldn't conception be followed by reasoning and then the judgment?
No. Conception is the foremost concept in the mind. You just to get the concept. Like your teacher in school teaches you division, for example, mathematics. The concept that a larger number can be divided into a smaller number. Am I saying that correctly? Yes. Can be divided, or is it the other way around? In any case, the concept, that's what you grasp. That's the initial concept. The further qiyas of that is when you will now go into higher levels of mathematics and do these complex long division problems and solve those. But the initial concept that 2 is greater than 1, that concept applies throughout, right? That's the tasawwur, and that comes in the immediate sense. You see, so if I held up any object, if I go out in nature and look at this leaf, I need to understand the concept of what this is before I start figuring out its particulars and does it do this, does it do that? If I pour acid on this, what will happen? If I shine a magnifying glass, what will happen? Should I do this? Should I not do this? Is it appropriate? Is not appropriate? All those are what you call extensions. So this is the comprehension, and then extension comes afterwards. That's how basically the mind also functions. Knowing the comprehensive and then going into extension. So that's what we're doing. We're looking at the comprehensive first. The 10 principles, these are the comprehensive. Then we go into the individual extensions of it. So in the order of asking, in the operations of the mind, the first question is always what. If you do not understand what, you cannot go into trying to ask why, because it will confuse you. So a child will ask, why, for example, why is the Kaaba square? How do you answer that question? You can't answer that question. Now, until the child understands what a square is, and then understands how that square was built, then maybe they will be able to understand why it takes on that shape. A cube, sorry, not a square. Until they understand what a cube is. And in order to understand a cube, they need to understand a square. Then they need to understand the process that undergoes into building a cube, the 90 degrees, and the breadth and the width and the height. You see, then they understand why it is that shape. I hope I'm answering your question on that. Don't worry about it. Like don't get overwhelmed by this in the beginning, because this is something that we're going to do throughout. Like I'm going to keep on repeating these things. They're going to keep on being brought up again every single time. So you'll actually grasp it once we do the actual examples in the different subtopics of the subject. Inshallah, you'll get it. Don't worry. Inshallah, you'll get it. Yeah.
Exactly.
There's a question.
Mm-hmm.
What do you see as the long-term effect on the mental condition of children who are now being displayed on social media by parents for perhaps a side income or popularity, since it may be saved by the internet until the child gets old?
Long-term effects? Forget long-term effects. Just the short-term effects. Within a year or so. Because you're already giving your child a sense of self-importance. That's what social media is. Why do they have that feature where you can take a picture of yourself and then post it on your account? And then why do they have all these features where you can add filters and you can add this and you can add that? What is all that about? It's not for selflessness, it's for selfishness. Now, parents who are doing it for their own children, now you're even more stupider than the parent who is only doing it for themselves. Because you're actually putting your child out there for people to say, MashaAllah, he's so cute, may Allah give him long life. That's called hasad. That is called envy. Even though it might be including MashaAllah in the comment, but the envious eye is already cast. And then you're wondering why your child is falling sick every time. I don't understand, why is this happening to my child? Well, you're putting your pictures out there and you want the world to clap for your child because you think it's something nice you're doing. And here's the thing, I've seen a lot of these people, they'll put the picture of their child and they'll put a smiley face on the face of the child. That's even more stupid than the stupidity that the first one does. Well, the first one does stupidity of posting their own pictures. The second one does the stupidity of posting their children's pictures. The third one does the further stupidity of putting a smiley face on that. Oh no, I don't want people to see the face because haram, now this makes it halal somehow. You put a smiley face. So now you've actually changed, in concept, you're changing the face of your child. Why do you feel the need to post the picture in the first place? This is the question. I just cannot wrap my head around all these people. Why do you feel the need to wanting to post the picture of your child on social media? Why? You cannot answer that simple question to yourself. Why do you feel the need to do that? What are you gaining from that? Is the angel on your shoulder writing down thawab for you while you're doing that? I don't understand. Maybe I'm missing something because they didn't teach us this in madrasa. I don't understand why you have to do that. Forget long-term effects. Look at the short-term effects. That picture is there permanently. And the more pictures you post, by the way, the character that is controlling this whole thing, that character who is called Ad-Dajjal, he knows everything now. He knows who your child is. He knows what you had for lunch. He knows where you went for shopping. He knows what you're wearing. He knows more about you than you know about. This is information you're supplying to his spy, his jassasa. You're giving information to him. And then you're worrying about how are we going to defeat the Dajjal. Huh? You see, I don't understand. This is it's just madness people have descended to. Why are you doing that? Can anyone answer me that question? Really, I want to know why people do that. What is the psychology here? Anyone from even from the Zoom, just unmute yourself. Tell me why somebody would do that. What's the benefit from that? I mean, yeah, that's the effect of it. You're addicted to doing it. Entertainment, you're getting a kick out of it. But what's the benefit of it? That's what I'm trying to understand. Validation because you didn't get love as a child, so now you want to try and get love from others? Or likes, fame and fortune. Now, all those points that you've noted there, are these the identifiers of the awliya?
Lack of logic.
Who said that? Lack of logic. I guess, yeah, lack of logic. There's no reason. It's just, there's no rhyme or reason to what they're doing. And, yeah, naam, wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. Go ahead.
I tried to get into getting a reason for you. I don't think there's any reason except that it is the course of history, because we know that from a hadith of Rasulullah, I don't have it in my mind, but it is like that. One point, the shayateen will come to that person, and then those shayateen will take the forms of their parents or ancestors and will relate to them things from their own ancestors, and they will believe in it, right? So basically what's happening right now is people are giving that information about their children, and then at one point the children of their grandchildren will come in face with those shayateen, and then that's going to happen. It's the course of history.
Yeah. I mean, yes, there is the hadith in which the Prophet ﷺ said that the Dajjal is going to raise up and prove to you that, see, I can bring the dead to life and bring up your grandparents. But the more interesting thing is here that these people, all these pictures that they take of themselves and put them on social media and everything, and of their children more so, it is a self-oriented society, culture. It's a selfish culture, and these are the kind of individuals who act and react based on impulses. The impulses that people, something comes up and they act on it, react on it, and then it becomes a compulsion. It becomes something that is part of their psychology. They just cannot help it. They have to. Every day a picture has to be uploaded. Some facial expression has to be made. Several likes and comments have to be met. That's whoever mentioned addiction. It becomes an addiction. The addiction is psychological. And they cannot survive without that. It just completely, their entire life, their spiritual being is now immersed in that. They are in that reality. And the tools are making it even more and more easy now. You've got, what is it called? Metaverse, multiverse, something, virtual reality thing that they're trying to do. It's becoming more and more. One doesn't finish, the other one starts. One doesn't finish, the other one starts. I don't know how many social media platforms there are now. I just can't keep up. And one finishes, the other one starts. People then justify it in any way they want. Oh, it's for my business. Oh, it's just for, because I get Islamic updates and I follow Mufti Menk on this. And I get all these different... Justify it however you want to justify it, for whatever reason you want to use it for. But it is steadily damaging you. It's not damaging anyone else. It's damaging you. And it's damaging your children when you now put pictures of your children on there. By the way, without their consent. By any legal institution, that would be considered a crime. Really. Because you're doing it without their consent. Now you can argue that in court and say, no, because they're under 18, they're under my guardianship, and therefore I can make a decision and all that. And these are debates that will keep on going on. New legislations will keep on rising from this. Can we do this? Can we not do that? But at the end of the day, when all these arguments are focused around these type of debates, guess what's happening? En masse, the larger population loses sight of what's really happening around that. And there is no way that you then come to understand what true reality is when you are immersed in these type of things. I'm sorry, you had a question?
It's norm for preteens to have social media accounts of their own.
Yeah, I personally didn't have a cell phone until I was 18 years old. And I remember that. I didn't have a Facebook account till I was 18. And that was just because my dad had finally brought a computer in the house. I didn't grow up with a computer. I didn't have a smartphone. And now I come to understand that there are children who are 7, 8 years old who have social media accounts, which this is just astounding. They've got their own TikToks and their Twitters and all these things. What are they doing on these things? It just doesn't make sense to me. And I'm not talking about, people who are already in state of ghafla. I'm talking about Muslims themselves. Muslims. Where have you descended yourselves to? And these are the same caricatures that are out there shouting, free, free Palestine. You are going to free Palestine? And this is your harkat? Subhanallah. Subhanallah. Really, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will guide you somehow, I don't know. But it just seems like you're done. Anyway, let's end here, inshallah, unless there's another question or anything.
Jazakallah, Ustad. I just wanted to apologize to everyone. I got disconnected for a while.
Mm-hmm.
So, apologies to everyone if there was any inconvenience. Jazakallah.
No, that he got disconnected. That was fine. Is there anyone else?
Zoom user.
Somebody there with the...
That's Zoom user.
Assalamu alaikum, teacher.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
Teacher, I did not quite get your argument while you were talking about the reason why people take photos and why they post photos on social media. I did not quite understand your is that what you said? Was that an argument?
I was trying to understand this, because the way I understand it is it is a compulsion of the self to want to express itself. It's the idea whereby the human being, because people like talking about themselves, really, that's a natural thing that the human being does. In general conversations, in general interactions, there is some sense of moderation that is typically applied. See, when you get together with other people, everyone talks a little bit about themselves, right? And then we have like a general conversation. But when you've got now access to that, unlimited access to have to express yourself in many ways, many different ways, where you get all these different tools available to you. You can take a picture, you can take a voice, you can do this, you can do that, you can do so many things. Then it becomes a compulsion, because it becomes addictive now to want to talk about yourself, to express yourself, as the word is. You see, you need to learn how to express yourself. So everybody wants to express themselves. See, I'm just being myself. Well, that's not actually a good thing. That's what people don't realize. Expressing yourself is not a good thing spiritually. Being yourself is not a good thing spiritually. Because you are sent here into this world to rectify yourself. Now, until you've rectified yourself, you can't actually be yourself. And all these people, you cannot tell me that they're saints and they've already achieved enlightenment, so now they can express themselves. So this idea that they have now got unlimited freedom to do this, and it's before you could say only adults would do it, so some sense of responsibility would be there. And these platforms were originally meant to have discussions, general discussions, people to get together like a forum, intellectual speaking. That's what the internet was designed for. Now it's been used as a tool, misused I would say, to facilitate the expression of the self. So now we're living in a society where it is ana wa nafsi, me, myself and I. So when you now allow the self, because in general interactions, in physical interactions, there are certain restrictions that apply that keep the self in moderation. You read the room, as you say, you see? But you take all those restrictions away and you give this person access to speak and to talk and to express themselves continuously, it ultimately becomes obsessive and compulsive. So when you talk about addiction, that's essentially what we're talking about. They become obsessively compulsive about it, that they cannot now refrain from doing that. They have to do it. I've spoken to people who tell me that the addiction is so bad that the first thing that they do when they wake up, the moment their eye wakes up, the eye opens, the first thing they do is look at their phone and look at their Facebook to see the notifications that have come up. In fact, they don't even switch off the phone or switch off their internet overnight. Sometimes they end up waking up in the middle of the night when the phone rings, when the notification bell comes on, and they wake up and they look at it. That's how bad these people have gotten to, reach their addiction. It's like the person who, can't, just has to get the shot in. And studies have shown that the addiction of social media is somewhere on the same levels as cocaine and heroin. They cannot get out of it. They have to have their cell phone wherever they go, every room they are in. You see? Now, I've seen people who, they've got power banks that they carry with them just so that the thing doesn't die out. And unfortunately, society itself is fueling this mode. This is why you look and you see service providers, they provide you with large data packets. Why? 75 gigabyte data package, 100 gigabyte data package on your phone. Nobody's calling anymore. Nobody's using it for what it's supposed to be. They're using it now as a syringe. That's what it is. It's a drug syringe that they're using it as. Yeah. I know, that's what I think. I mean, I could be wrong. What do I know? It's not like I've studied these things, but...
Yes, sir.
No.
Just have a question. You said before that we have to arrange a meeting where you will talk about the subject about, was it about revolution, or you meant about something else? Like that we have to arrange
there was
a
somebody who had asked a question about parenting and
Yes.
education. Yeah. So that's, like I said, you guys arrange that amongst yourselves, what day works for you, and you can interact with Saif and make the arrangement for when you would like me to have a session with you on that subject. Don't leave it to me. Don't wait for me to say, okay, I'm free this weekend, let's get together. It won't work with me. I'm busy. I'm busy 24 hours. Even when I'm sleeping, I'm busy. So don't leave it to me to make up the time. No, you guys set the time. Let me know, this is the time you are thinking. Does this work for you? I'll make movements around my schedule and I'll come in and I'll participate. So don't wait for others. This is something that, a part of that question that was asked about parenting, this is something that we have to change ourselves in, first and foremost. You see, we want the scholar to make the time come in and arrange for everything, set up the course, set up everything. Now there's something official, now we can sit down and learn. That's not how the Muslims studied. There was nothing like that in our tradition. People went and sought out scholars to sit and study with them, and the scholars made time accordingly. Don't wait for things to be arranged for you. You are the seeker of knowledge. You are talibul ilm. You are the one who's looking for a means. Don't wait for the means to just appear. Go out and seek it. If you want a scholar to speak to you on any subject, you make the arrangements and invite the scholar to speak. Don't wait for things to be done for you. I'm very blunt on this note, but that's just how it is. This is part of our discipline. Now, yes, go ahead.
How about talking to yourself? It's a good thing or a bad thing for yourself?
Talking to yourself is a good thing in one sense, is also a bad thing in one sense. It's sort of you're arguing with yourself or having a discussion with yourself. It's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. You're always in communication with yourself in any case. Remember, your dynamics, your internal governing dynamics are you've got a king, you've got a vizier, you've got your administration, and you've got your police force. These faculties within yourself are always in communication anyway. So talking to yourself is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Expressing yourself, that's where the issue lies. How much do you express? And how do you express? That's where the issue lies. See, people like, for example, tattoos. People want to get tattoos. What is tattoo? It's egoistic. Really, that's all there is to it. It's just an egoistic trait. I'm expressing myself. See, I've got a butterfly on my back. You don't have one. So I'm better than you. That's what it is. Ana khayrun minhu. I'm better than you. Myself is better than you. So you look at pictures on Instagram and you see these different people and you start feeling jealous. You start feeling envious. Then you try to best that. So you do something even better than that. And then you post yours so that they can then feel jealous of you. It's a battle of egos. Anyway.
Besides moving to the countryside, how would we be able to maintain our iman when they are increasingly pulling us into these systems? The story of the youth of the cave went in the opposite side of society. How do we do the equivalent when they're using these tools to force one global community?
Okay, that's a different discussion altogether. So, inshallah, if we can have if you can ask that question in the next session, because we've already gone way over our time limit. But it's a different discussion. So I'm sorry, those whose questions I couldn't answer. Inshallah, we can ask your questions next session, then we can speak. My throat is now paining. I'm sorry. Can we end here, inshallah? Okay, so let's end here, inshallah. Jazakumullahu khairan. Subhanaka wa bihamdika nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا يا مولانا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. بارك الله فيكم والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. جزاكم الله خيرا. Inshallah, those whose questions were not answered this session, we can maybe ask your questions next session as well. Then we can continue that, inshallah. Jazakumullah. Ameen. Jazakumullah.